Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Dorothy, Gifts from the Holy Ghost, out April 22nd on Spine Farm Records. The album has 10 tracks, 37 minutes in length, and this is the band's third full-length studio album. They are an American rock group. This is a record that doesn't offer patterns, that doesn't tie itself to one single sound, one single experience, song in and song out, making the album perhaps feel a little bit more unified, a little bit more balanced in terms of what the experience and how that sound creates the experience as you navigate it through. This album is a lot more diverse. I wouldn't go as far as to say chaotic, but it's definitely dynamic. It moves in a lot of different ways, and it really showcases all the different experiences, all the growth that this band has experienced, bringing them to the point of creating this record. So it becomes almost a synopsis of the road that they have traveled to this point. And that is what makes this album interesting. It makes it interesting from a design perspective, and then it obviously makes it interesting from a soundscape approach. There are still enough elements that ground the record, that unify the album, that make you feel like you are within one single record, even though the faces of the album are constantly changing on a song-by-song basis. As far as the soundscape goes, this album is not overly produced. It has a lot of grit in it, and that was perhaps the thing that surprised me the most. It felt very organic from that perspective. It felt very natural, almost like a jam session. You press record, you play, and what you get is what you get. This album has a lot of that in it. Now, some songs feel a little bit more worked than others, but that also goes with the theme of the song, with the emotional elements of the track, with the lyrical content, and what they wanted sound-wise, and what they wanted the experience to be with those specific tracks. But I feel like getting to the end of the record and looking back at what the experience was all about, I think you have to see how much grit, how much dirt exists on this album, and how rock and roll that is to the overall experience. When you start to fix things or clean things up and polishing the overall soundscape on a record, specifically an album that tries to be as down and dirty rock and roll as this one is, you start to lose the essence of the genre, the essence of that sound. And I felt like they were able to keep that essence alive and well, regardless of the different experiences, regardless of the different sound approaches, the different mixings and styles that they took on a track-by-track basis. Now, you're gonna come to this album because of the vocals. That's undeniable. But I have to mention the guitar. The guitar sound, the guitar riffs, the solos, the different approaches, the different executions, the different styles that they offered throughout this entire record was really interesting. And while you may come for the vocals, I think you're gonna stay a little bit for the guitar sound. I really enjoy the guitar performance. I enjoy what this album offered. It offered that grit. It offered that down and dirty rock and roll approach with some blues elements, some pop elements, some punk elements. Really diversified, but always very grounded and always very natural and emotional. That is the main characteristic of the overall experience of the record, and you obviously gonna see it in one of the main core elements, the guitars. But the vocals, Dorothy's vocals are phenomenal. She has a great range. She has a great tone. The sound on this record felt very warm. She had a warm delivery to it, and it felt really connected. This is a record that perhaps is more connected than any album that the band has released before, and that also comes across in her vocal performance. She feels what she's saying. She feels what she's singing. She's singing from perhaps a place of experience, a place that's still very raw within herself, and that all comes across and allows the album to feel a lot more connected. And as a listener, you're taken into a place that perhaps you've never been before as far as this band is concerned. And that allows the record to have a very special place in the listeners' hearts and definitely in the fans' hearts as well. All around, I really enjoyed this record because of that. I enjoyed the diversity. I enjoyed the diversity that it had, but never really losing track of where it started and where it wants to take the listener. I love that they used the vocals with some diversity, but still enough there to really connect and be the red line that merges this album, that glues this record together and allows that sound to go in different directions. So a very well constructed, executed, planned out, delivered album all around. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with A Beautiful Life. This is the opening track of the album, and it's an opening track that makes sense for many reasons. It makes sense from a lyrical perspective in terms of what you're going to get afterwards. It makes sense from a soundscape approach, and it definitely makes sense from a vocal perspective as well. It's a very chirpy, a very uplifting track. There's a sense of a light at the end of the tunnel. There's always there. The light may be fainted, it may be small at times. You may not even realize that the light is there because you're so concentrated on everything that brings darkness to your life. And this song kind of feels that way. It feels like there is hope, and the song really delivers that sense of hope musically and vocally. The chorus is phenomenal. I really enjoy the chorus on this track because it feels more dynamic. The vocals feel more dynamic. They lift up the track. It has some pop elements in that chorus that really makes this song jump out, becoming a little bit more hooky, a little bit more catchy, not necessarily musically, but definitely vocally, and how it's put across and how it translates to the overall design of the song itself. Next you have Big Guns. This song has some country vibes. I wouldn't go as far as to call it a country song because it's not, but it's definitely a rock track with a country twang. That's kind of how it came across. It had some Shania Twain moments to it, if you will. Vocally very engaging. Musically it feels a little bit more linear, not as dynamic as A Beautiful Life. It just goes more straightforward. It's more balanced in its construction, more balanced in terms of how it's delivered, but vocally it feels very energetic. It lifts itself up, it brings itself down. It has a lot of movement within the vocal approach, not necessarily the music that sits behind it. It struts along. It's a song that moves, that struts, that really rocks, that really walks the catwalk, and you're gonna walk it with it as you're listening to it. Last but not least, Made to Die. This is one of my favorite songs on the album. I really connected not just with the sound, but with the lyrical content and the overall delivery. It just feels very gritty. It feels very raw. It feels very unpolished, not just in the sound, but in the emotion that drives it and how the vocals come across as well. And that is definitely something that you feel from the get-go. The bass, how they use the bass on this song allows that grit to jump to the forefront, allows the track to feel dirtier, to feel like it's dragging itself, and that's a very important element if you're going to have that sort of soundscape, that sort of experience from start to finish. It becomes less noticeable as you progress, but it sets the tone early on. Now the chorus is powerful. The chorus is what brings you to this track because the chorus sounds amazing. Musically, vocally, lyrically, the chorus is phenomenal. It really stands out and becomes that earworm, that hook, that catchiness that brings you back time in and time out again for you to be able to enjoy this song in terms of what it has to deliver. Phenomenal track in terms of the sound that it has, the grittiness that it has, how dirty does it sound, but then when you get into that chorus, everything lifts up and you see the energy, the power that resides behind it. I just absolutely love Made to Die. This is it, Dorothy, Gifts from the Holy Ghost, out April 22nd on Spine Farm Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.